Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I am your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, as Pakistan unveils its budget for the fiscal year 2026, nation finds itself at a critical juncture or the economic crossroads, with growth inching forward from a negative 0.2% in 2023 to a modest 2.7% in 2025. The government now eyes on an ambitious target of 4.2% of the GDP growth. But the big question is, can this momentum be sustained? Now, there are lots of questions arises about Pakistan's economic growth. What about the inflation stay in check after dropping from nearly 25% to under 5%? Is the drop in interest rates enough to revive private investments? Are reforms in taxation and revenue targets, industry and trade are performing bold enough to break the stagnation? From slightly sluggish agriculture output to the burdened manufacturing sector, to the rise in the defense budget and persistent public debt, every sector now stands at the edge of revival. We will also look into the promises like digital tax reforms, support for farmers, real estate relief, state-owned enterprises restructuring or privatization, and the tariff rationalization. To discuss this very aspect of Pakistan's budget for the fiscal year 2020, we have in our studios Dr. Hidayat Khan. He is the head of Department of Economics at the National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence here.
Thank you for having me.
And with him, Dr. Usman Chohan. He is the advisor to the President Center for Aerospace and Security Studies, CAS, on economic affairs. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence here.
Thank you.
My first question to you, Dr. Hidayat, that in budget fiscal year 2025, the current fiscal year, government set an ambitious target of 3.6%, but seems it will miss its target as the Pakistan Economic Survey unveils that country actually posted during the current fiscal year the GDP growth of 2.7%, which according to the National Accounts Committee showed at 1.3% for the first quarter, then second quarter 1.53% and 2.4% in the third one. Now it means that to attain 2.7% GDP growth, economy should have to attain maximum of 5.5% regarding April, June. So this is June now. We are ending our current year. So how would it be possible really?
Thank you very much for having me in today's program. And it has been debated a lot. I am the part of a number of economic forums, and the target for last quarter of current fiscal year of 5.5% has been hugely debated, and it is a controversial as well, because for the previous 3 quarters we are having a growth rate of around more or less 2%. So how it is possible that we can have 5.5%? Yes, there are some realities in case of Pakistan, like most of the developmental expenditure are made in the last couple of months of fiscal year, or they are even withhold for the last 2-3 months. So from that side, we are expecting a push. Another thing, due to Eid al-Adha, there will be an influx or an increase in the remittances. So from that side, we are also expecting a surge, or we are expecting growth. But for the rest, most of our major sectors, be it agriculture or large industrial sector or our different services sectors, we are not able to meet our targets, and we have badly missed those targets. So keeping the previous track record, I don't expect much from the rest of the sector, but the two, one from the government expenditure and the second from remittances.
Okay, your point well taken. But one thing I want to mention that Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb, he said that Pakistan's GDP growth in 2023 was actually negative 0.20. That was 0.20, rose to at least 2.5% in 2024. Now it's 2.7%. Means it's a gradual recovery, not the fastest one, but the gradual recovery. And unfortunately, why we are more emphasized on our traditional exports and the traditional industry, we are not adding much into that.
Unfortunately, this year, which is quite alarming for Pakistanis, and it will be alarming for our finance minister as well. The agriculture sector, which was producing more than 5% growth in last years, it has been less than 1%. And most of our major crops like wheat and maize, not only the areas under cultivation has been reduced, but their production has been sharply fallen. The other, which is quite tragic and which is quite alarming, despite the growth in the area under cultivation of sugarcane and rice, our production declined. So our policymakers have to seriously think about that the sector which was contributing a lot to our economy, why it has been squeezing or why it has been shrinking. There are climatic reasons as well, but on the other side, we are not having efficient policies responses as well. And we have discussed this previously several times. What had happened to the wheat crop last year?
Yes, definitely. You are absolutely right. Dr. Usman, for the fiscal year 2026, the World Bank and International Monetary Fund both projected Pakistan's GDP growth to be 3.1% and 3.6% respectively. Asian Development Bank projected as at 3%. So in the light of next financial year 2026 budget estimate, the growth target set at 4.2%. What urgently to be done to achieve this ambitious target, especially when the growth rate is actually gradual and very slower in nature since last 3 years, with large scale industries are actually struggling. Agriculture output is unfortunately 0.56%, the meager one against the target of 2% only. Then the trade diversification is still missing. We don't have any, because that needs to diversify industry first, and that needs the cost of doing business must have to be eased, like power, gas, electricity, raw materials and all others. And unfortunate thing is that even the foreign direct investment, though it's consistent, but it's very lower and slower in its pace. Still, we are not picking up in FDIs basically as expected. So how do you see overall situation, and when we foresee the estimate of 4.2% at least in GDP?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. You know, these conversations we are having now are very growth oriented. That's good. But for the past 2.5 years, the conversation was about stabilization. That the global economy was a real mess, conflicts were erupting left, right and center, commodity prices went through the roof, many countries fell into default, and in that time, alhamdulillah, the Pakistanis showed resilience. It wasn't easy, people still suffer, but yes, they have demonstrated that time-tested resilience as a people and made it through. So the sudden change in the conversation from stabilization to growth itself is leaving us perplexed. I believe that we have achieved that stabilization phase, and what you are getting in terms of commitments from the multilateral lenders is a good sign. And at the same time, as Doc Saab mentioned, there is a strong boost from remittances, so we do have very positive indicators on this side. And now the conversation must change to growth. And then we are hit with all of these surprising things. For example, we talk about large-scale manufacturing falling short, and there is a correlation between large-scale manufacturing as well as farmer incomes or agricultural output. And so suddenly we are looking at the missing parts. So I believe that you will not see those addressed immediately. because
Obviously.
the
Yeah, right, very right.
reorientation, yes, the reorientation of the government itself is going to take at least a year, I think, and you will see actually proper measures put in as well as things addressed on a growth basis in next budget. So we have gone through this difficult super cycle of 5 years, which began with COVID, and now we are at this phase where commodity prices are falling. This is a very good boost. Remittances are strong, and at the same time the government is, according to the IMF, satisfaction, doing okay with the program. So this reorientation cannot happen overnight. We were talking about stabilization even 24 hours ago, and now we went into growth all of a sudden. It cannot happen like that. So I think this reorientation is the most important part of the conversation now.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Dr. Hidayat, government has announced some vital measures for the small farmers. But overall farmers' condition is on decline with squeezing cultivated areas primarily due to the increasing cost of farming, expensive fertilizers, rising seed, fuel and machinery costs, obviously, low unavailability, or you can say the harsh weather as well, then with the crash in the support price mechanism. That's why the economic survey actually shows the agriculture growth merely 0.56%. When all important crops decline by 13.49%, leading to a decline of 30.7% in cotton, 8.9% in wheat, 3.9% of sugarcane, 15.4% in maize, and 1.4% in rice. So how do you see this overall aspect? Because agriculture, and particularly Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Sindh, these are the country's baskets, food baskets. This is not only creating some sort of mayhem into the country's overall economy, agro-economy particularly, but also there is a danger for food insecurity as well.
Your question is very pertinent, especially from food security perspective. And when we have to feed more than 240 million of the population, a huge population.
Yes.
So actually, what I get from this picture, in last couple of years, agriculture sector has been neglected. And as rightly has been mentioned by Dr. Usman, that our priority was something else. Our priority was stabilization. So during that juggling, we have forgotten our bread and butter. So that's why I think this is the right time. And I will again support Dr. Usman for reorientation. If we are reorienting our policy towards growth, but it shouldn't be at the cost of our primary sector, which is agriculture actually.
Obviously.
Even like as you have mentioned that the cotton has been declined. How this gap will be fulfilled? You need to import cotton.
Definitely you will import cotton.
And it will be costing you more foreign exchange, and you will be borrowing more external debt.
And that will be more costly for the industry to, to have some sort of a growth or production really.
Same is the case of food commodities.
Yes.
You will be importing it, and with so much
especially
burden.
the confectionery industry, because they always rely upon the raw material from within the country.
Yes. So the problem is that, you know, when your biggest problem was balance of payment, and when you have stabilized it, but you have ignored the part of the economy which can sustain that stabilization. So this is something which is very alarming, and as I have told
and that's might be one of the reason why our imports are actually rising and our exports are declining.
The second thing, sorry, I will add a little bit to that. The support price, it should have come earlier. When we were just about to harvest our wheat.
Unfortunately, there is no support price right now because of the mechanism derived last year.
Yes, so that is delayed, but I think
now it's solely market driven now.
Yes, so the problem is that if we are not having support price for our basic commodities, we will be having more difficult situation in agriculture.
I think so. There must have to be some sort of incentives given to the farmers. Some of them are given in this budget, but these are meager. Farmers need a lot of support because
yes, of course, if you are not getting fertilizer in your sowing season,
yes.
So what kind of support we are providing to the farmers?
And
At least-
this is the critical
At
juncture.
least
really.
we have to ensure the supply of inputs. If not, if we are not able to manage the prices, we should ensure that provision of seed, fertilizer, and fuel. Even diesel has issues when we have harvesting.
One thing I think so, we should appreciate that the government is very much sensitized on that, and they are accepting that criticism. That is very positive.
Yes.
Because you know that even the finance minister yesterday, he was always, he said that he is always welcoming all sort of criticism that is, but because we want to mend it in a positive way. So that is very crucial thing to
That
do.
is
Really.
appreciable.
Appreciable, really. Dr. Usman, according to the economic survey, industry showed a revival, especially the large-scale manufacturing that stood at 4.77%, which was actually contracted by 1.5%. Cotton, textile, and auto sectors actually they displayed some sort of a recovery, but other remained subdued, mainly because of the energy tariffs and substantial interest rates continue to choke industry's competitiveness, while the servicing sector, the services sector, which is nearly 60% of the overall GDP, emerged as a steadying force, particularly the finance, wholesale, trade, and information technology. What's your thoughts on that, really?
Well, you've painted a very elaborate picture, because what you are actually alluding to is that these industries work at cross purposes. The fact is that finance and your banking sector doing well is structurally because the other sectors are struggling. And therefore you have to seek this balance between your financial and non-financial sectors. A big part of what we consider the interest payments in our budget are actually to the domestic banking system. That is entirely in your control. That is entirely in your currency. So there is nothing impeding you from taking a good hard look at this. And I think that the financial sector doing well is very good. And the deregulation that happened in the past has led to a very thriving sector. But at the same time, not everybody works in a bank. In fact, the largest portion of the well-being of society would be from farmers' incomes increasing.
Absolutely.
As well as the manufacturing, and you have certainly hit the nail on the head by pointing to the two key impediments that would actually, addressing your previous question, lead to the growth. One is that energy costs have to come down. And we're seeing a revolution in Pakistan. We are one of the fastest solarizing and soon shall be perhaps the most solar country ever. It's very possible. And at the same time, you have these interest rates. So the real interest rate, because I keep an eye on it, month on month has been positive for almost a year now. How can you have such vast differentials between what inflation is measured at and the real interest rate? This kind of reactiveness and this gap means that the financial sector is benefiting with a real positive net interest rate, and then at the same time the rest of the manufacturing sector and every other sector suffers because of this. So in easing the borrowing costs, especially if it's for capex, for capital investment, would be very good. At the same time, try to find that financial non-financial balance would be the summary of this point.
Your point well taken. Viewers, we welcome Hasan Zafar. He is the political economy analyst. Most welcome to you, Dr. Hasan. Thank you very much for joining us. My question is to you is that how do you see the projected inflation 7.5% during the next fiscal year 2026, which currently presents a rare but bright spot from the punishing highs of 24.9% in July, May-July 2024. Then we have CPI has dropped to at least 4.6% July-May 2025, aided by easing global prices and a stable rupee, with food inflation actually nearing to zero, while the State Bank of Pakistan responded by slashing interest rates from 22% to 11%. It's approximately or exactly the half of it. A move aimed at reviving the private investment, but yet the real interest rate remains very high, even if we count it from the headline inflation. So keeping the credit costly, how do you see, how can we revive actually the private investments when we have the interest rate still too high?
Thank you very much, Faisal sir, for the question. So let's begin by looking at the positive side of it. This projected inflation rate of 7.5% for the fiscal year 25-26, it signifies a positive outlook compared to the previous years when the inflation was soaring to somewhere around 24.9, 25%. And several factors have contributed to this improvement. Number one, you can say global commodity prices easing. Global prices, especially for energy and food, the oil prices in the world market are low, which have contributed to the easing of the inflation and reduced domestic inflation pressures. Currency stabilization, we have seen that the currency has remained stable, relatively stable. Pakistani rupee has lessened imported inflation, which has historically been a major driver. Food inflation has been near zero. That has also, the declining food prices have a direct positive impact on overall CPI given their weight, the basket. But the challenge remains. I think this is what you are more interested in me talking about. The challenge remains with the monetary policy stance. State banks' decision to slash interest rates from 22 to 11%, which the government is celebrating. It was intended to stimulate private sector growth and investment, which hasn't happened as we were hoping it would. But you rightly pointed out that real interest rates, which account for inflation, still remain relatively high. This means borrowing costs are still burdensome for businessmen and consumers, potentially limiting the desired economic revival, which as we were hoping, because this is the third year this government is in power. This is the second budget which the finance minister, Mr. Aurangzeb, has presented. And I was particularly personally hoping to see some kind of structural changes, fundamental changes that we have been talking about from time to time. We have not seen that happening. It's just a business as usual kind of thing that we see in this budget. So in essence, while the inflation outlook appears manageable and supportive for growth, balancing inflation control with affordable credit remains a delicate task. That's what we can say. The government and the SBP will need to ensure that monetary easing does not reignite inflationary pressures, that credit remains accessible to foster sustainable growth. So that is where we are.
So, Dr. Hasan, what about, we have discussed it a lot about the Federal Board of Revenue's transformation, especially when in the recent budget, Finance Minister categorically said that there was an introduction of the series of measures in digital transformation, like use of business-to-business e-invoicing, artificial intelligence in sales and income tax point of sale integration across 4 provinces, e-way billing on the goods transportation, then faceless audit in customs, then digital workflow for the custom officers, enforcement alerts, centralized data unit, and restructuring of PRAL board, while conversion of at least 800 column return form into a simple form with 7 basic information tools. So how do you see such reforms to have more revenue in the next fiscal year, and particularly relying more upon the digital transformation rather than just the having a manual type of thing? So do you not think that this will give more ease to the government to have more revenues?
It will maybe enhance the revenue collection. But FBR, it's the most contentious part of the whole business when we talk about it, because the general allegation is that the FBR or the government through the FBR is squeezing the salaried class. It is not enhancing the tax network horizontally. It is one portion of the taxpayers which is being targeted and squeezed. So FBR's push toward digital transformation that you are talking about, it is a good leap forward in Pakistan's tax administration landscape. And the key highlights and implications you can see, it can enhance transparency and efficiency. Digital tools like B2B e-invoicing, digital workflows, streamline compliance, reduce human intervention and minimize opportunities, but it all looks good on the paper. How it will play out in reality, that remains to be seen. And AI integration, using AI in sales and income tax processing can improve detection of anomalies, optimize audits, personalize taxpayer service, and cross-provincial POS integration and e-way billing measures facilitate real-time tracking of transactions and good movement, curbing under invoicing and smuggling, faceless customs and digital enforcement, or automating customs audits and enforcement alerts ensures faster processing and reduced corruption, making trade smoother and more transparent, centralized data, and restructuring PRAL can also mean unified data system, enhancing data accuracy, analysis, strategic decision making, while reassuring PRAL aims to improve its operational efficiency. But overall, these reforms reflect a strategic move towards modernizing Pakistan's tax system. Apparently, I would insist apparently, because it will always remain to be seen how it actually plays out, how we are able to broaden the tax network. We have not heard of the wealth tax that the leading economists like Dr. Hafiz Pasha, they have been talking about. What about the large land holdings, the big landlords, which according to Dr. Pasha's study, 25% of our nicest agricultural land, his words, they are owned by 2% people. So what about the wealth tax being imposed on those people who have such large land holdings? These are difficult questions, and we have not, unfortunately, we haven't seen any answers for these questions in Mr. Aurangzeb's presentation in the assembly yesterday.
Absolutely, Dr. Saab, you are absolutely right on that account. Dr. Usman, in spite of the slight improvement of 10.3% in the tax to GDP ratio, and government is expecting might it rise to 10.4% as well till the end of this fiscal year, government expectation is also that it might cross the 12% even. So what about the current revenue shortfall? And then another ambitious revenue target of 14.13 trillion for the fiscal year 2026. As currently, FBR has so far collected 10.2 trillion in tax up to May. This is not included, June is not included actually, marking a 26% year-on-year increase, but it feared to miss the revised target of even 12.3 trillion rupees. Do you not think that our over-reliance on the indirect taxation, a narrow tax base, the weak enforcement, and even regulatory framework, the blanket policy measures and excessive high rates actually placing the overall system on the weaker side?
Absolutely, I fully agree with you. I think the FBR has actually done a pretty good job. And I think we're very unfair to the FBR because in a country of 25 crore people, you can't have one institution doing everything, dealing with 25 crore people.
No doubt. They are doing an excellent job. They are overburdened.
Yes.
But it is also a fact that there must have to be a target rationalization when we are actually assessing any sort of a target for the next fiscal year. I think so that must have to be realized, and those targets must have to be in a real account rather than to be just in the bookish form.
Absolutely. And you saw in this budget that there's measures for relief for the real estate sector, but actually I think that there are some sectors of the Pakistani economy which we need to toughen up on tax collection, because I believe that the salaried class cannot be squeezed any further. I think that their back is broken.
No doubt about that.
That the way we have done it disproportionately towards these easy prey, the low-hanging fruit of the salaried class, is very unfair. There are some principles of taxation that are universally accepted, that a system should be fair, it should be neutral, it should be efficient, it should be simple. When we arrive at this, then we won't be blaming the thing as a FBR. We will be looking at the totality of the structure. We will be expecting the provinces and local government to raise their own revenues. We'll be using other instruments such as property tax. Other sectors that are outside of the purview will be brought in. And then actually people in Pakistan, I guarantee you, will actually want to pay more tax. They will go out of their way because they'll see that public value is created from the taxes they give. And that is the agenda we want to get at.
Most of the people, Dr. Usman, you are absolutely right. Most of the people wants to pay taxes voluntarily. They don't want overburden because they are feeling that whenever they receive any sort of SMS or email regarding to pay the taxes, they feel it burdened.
Yes.
They feel it as a stress. So I think so there must have to be a system, should be revived in a way that people must have to be facilitated in a case. Dr. Hidayat, when we are talking about overall relief that was proposed for the real estate, construction in the housing sector, that was also promised last year and now proposed practically, will boost the activities. There is no doubt about that. Withholding tax reduced from 4% to 2.5%. That is encouraging. 3.5% to 2% and 3% to 1%. Now, 7% of the federal excise duty on the transfer of commercial properties, houses and the plots is proposed to be abolished. Now, mortgage loans for housing construction will be encouraged without any sort of a taxation. Then penalties on non-filers, tax on digital marketplaces, e-commerce and online businesses. These are introduced actually. So how do you see that we can't move in isolation actually, but in real terms, when we see the revival of the expected revival of the housing construction and the real estate, number one, and second is to tax the non-taxed.
I think from 2020 onward, the sector of economy which was struggling and it was, I think, hammered a lot is real estate. So, and most of our activity was coming from the real estate and telecommunication back in 2022.
Yes.
So this is a good decision. And the second thing, which people like us, the student of economics, have some fears about that maybe this is just for this fiscal year and this is just for those people who have parked their money in the real estate and just to provide them an opportunity to take their stake out of it. So if it is for the long term, for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, I think the real estate will bounce back. And by bouncing back of the real estate, there are around 60 to 70 other small industries which are connected with it.
No doubt, no doubt.
So it will grow and it will provide the boost to the economy. The second thing about the online payment system, yes, there are windfall gains for some, even like online mode of transportation, online huge stores, and they are paying nothing. So they should be included. But the way, like we always, why we are afraid to go to direct taxation? Why we are targeting the courier services, which is just a link between the consumer and the real merchant or the real trader? Why not we should target the traders which are sitting on that? And whenever you are using an intermediary, you cannot get the real outcome.
We don't have to target the source of profits, but the profits.
Yes, of course, and the profits are going to the pocket of the trader. And everyone knows that where that trader or where that service provider is sitting. So it is a right decision, but the tool or method for its implementation which is used, it is just hazardous the way we are correcting GST.
Obviously, you are absolutely right.
And
absolutely.
the third thing, like you were saying, non-filer.
I'm not saying non-filers. There is no category like non-filers.
Okay.
I'm saying it that those who are untaxed must have to be taxed.
Untaxed. So unfortunately, a large number of people who have invested in the real sector, they are untaxed. So who will bail the cat?
Definitely, definitely. Those actually who are the investors or who are getting the real profits, those must have to be taxed, and tax must have to be direct rather than the indirect taxes. This is very important, but still we have a huge ratio of indirect taxes rather than to be the direct taxes. Dr. Usman, how do you see the surge of 430 billion rupees into the national defense budgets? That has actually swelled to 2.55 trillion rupees now, from the previous 2.12 trillion. It was earlier projected to rise 13.7% based on pre-conflict allocations, but that may exceed because due to the recent geopolitical tensions, potentially it was earlier proposed 32% to 2.8 trillion rupees. But the financial constraints were actually the real issue behind, so that's why it was not hiked much. But how do you see overall aspect of this 2.55 trillion rupees hike in the defense budget? Although I'm not comparing it with our adversary because there is no comparison. But in the current economic aspects, how do you see this increase in surge?
I think that this is a tremendous investment for Pakistan. And I'm speaking particularly of the Air Force, because the Air Force is just a part of the military. But just the Air Force's deployment in this conflict was spectacular. As expected, they are an amazing institution. And with such a, in absolute dollar terms, minor investment, you were able to win a military victory against an adversary so much larger, which spends far more and has far more problems as a result. That investment goes a lot further. And here's the thing, India now will get a carte blanche for its Air Force to spend a lot. You have to maintain some parity in investment, and every dollar put into this Air Force is spent in a way that is forward-looking, efficient, and for the national security. So I believe that we will have to have an increment anyways, and other ways are also being pursued. For example, concessional ways to acquire important things from China. There are other ways to go about it. There is, of course, co-production and co-work with China, which is very important. But investing in your Air Force specifically, because this conflict had a very specific deployment.
Yes.
And that you invest in that, it will lead to immense gains in terms of the assurance of national security relative to your adversaries.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Dr. Hasan, what about the urgency of privatization, restructuring of public-private partnerships when it comes to the state-owned enterprises, SOEs, as the government acknowledged that they are actually consuming rupees 800 billion of national exchequer annually. So at least 45 entities are either going to be privatized or merged or winded up. 40,000 posts are already abolished. Recommendations for 10 ministries are finalized, while the proposal underway for another 8 ministries under the federal government. So how do you see this government step to actually relinquishing the burden which is already there at the government and at the national exchequer, obviously?
I think this is a very important area where we should be paying attention, because reckless privatization can also cause problems. We have seen that happening, and we also need to learn from the American example, what has happened in the United States in the previous 30 years, and where their free-floating market economy is standing in relation to the Chinese economy, which has shown consistent growth over the past 2-3 decades. And Chinese model is partially state-owned and partially free market economy. So when we are going for the privatization, I think this also needs to be taken into consideration, and addressing the financial drain caused by the SEOs, which is our main worry, is indeed critical for Pakistan's fiscal health, because of the amount of debt that is accumulating, and the rupees 800 billion annual subsidy burden not only strains the national exchequer but also hampers fiscal sustainability. The government's multi-pronged approach, privatization, mergers, wind-ups, as we have heard, and the staff rationalization is a necessary step, one can say, but privatization and IPPs are essential to bring efficiency, competitiveness, innovation into sectors traditionally managed by SOEs. Actually, it is a matter of mismanagement rather than disposing them off without much thinking about it. So either the government has to dispose them off or show some ability to manage them better. So these areas can perform better. Let's not forget what Dr. Kaisar Bengali was arguing about it, that there are key enterprises which are important for our national security and defense. Some routes, when we talk about PIA's privatization, so there are certain routes of the PIA which are important for our national defense and national security. So
Another very important aspect, Dr. Hasan, is that we have to perform very efficiently and very diligently when we are talking about the public debt that actually stands at rupees 74.93 trillion now, rupees 6.022 trillion year-on-year increase actually by the end of April. So it's approximately 64% of the GDP right now, although less than 70%, but with external obligations amounting to rupees 22.41 trillion, breaching the Fiscal Responsibility and Debt Limitation Act. Debt servicing alone actually consumes nearly half of the government revenues, leaving limited fiscal space for the development spendings as well. So how do you see this huge debt burden Pakistan has internally and externally? How we can go away with it? Because every year we are actually investing trillions of rupees out of our revenue into the debt servicing, and we have nothing left for actually the overall development of the social sector inside the country.
Now, this links with your previous question, because the state-owned enterprises, the size of the government has not been reduced at all. This is what we were hoping to see, that this government will show some seriousness in this direction. Reducing government size, on the other hand, it has been increased from time to time, and the external debt obligations of rupees 22.41 trillion are the key concern, especially since debt servicing consumes nearly 50% of government revenues. The high debt service ratio leaves minimal room for investments in infrastructure, social services, economic growth initiatives, etc. The breach of the FRDLA indicates the debt management policies need strengthening. Excessive reliance on borrowing can create a debt trap, and that is what the main worry is. But the fiscal space constraint means Pakistan must prioritize debt sustainability, improve revenue collection. So everything that you have asked in this program is linked. You improve your revenue collection, broaden the tax base, burden the wealthy people with tax, and giving some space to your middle class, because if you are taxing the middle class so heavily, that reduces their ability to purchase from the market. If they cannot purchase from the market, how is your market going to function? So that also needs to be seen.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, Dr. Hasan, absolutely right. Dr. Hidayat, we have run very short of time, so be brief on that. Now, this time, actually, there are lots of reasons for that, why we have curtailed our development budget, and that is now 1 trillion only. That was 1.4 trillion earlier in the last fiscal year or the current fiscal year. Next fiscal year will see only 1 trillion rupees. So how do you see, because now we are actually at the point where we need glaring development across the country. Our poverty is for 44.7%, 26 million children are still out of school, and public spendings on education and health still hovering around, or that is below 5%. How do you see overall scenario of the development inside the country?
Every dollar invested in the development have capacity to earn more than $1, which we call multiplier effect. So definitely when you are reducing your PSDP, you are not only affecting your growth, but you are also affecting the economic activities in your country and long-term growth of your country. So that is it. And it is crystal clear. There is no debate about that. The second thing which you have mentioned in your question is that we are going, sorry, I forgot that, the second part.
Yes, yes, definitely, regarding health and education.
Okay. You know, again, health and education, it also have multiplier effects. And we are the country which I repeatedly saying that we are counting on only one thing, our human capital, our human capital, our human capital. And if we are not investing in health and education, how can we expect the dividend from our population bulge? So both are I think for me, being a student of economics, these are very painful decisions. But as it has been mentioned by Dr. Usman rightly, that we are facing a situation, we are facing an existential threat.
Your point well taken. Dr. Usman, very brief in one liner. Government is considering now lower trade tariffs under the National Tariff Policy 2025-2030. That includes abolishing the additional custom duties, and even in next 4 years there are lots of aspects of abolishing the regulatory duties in next 5 years, the fifth schedule of the Custom Duty Act 1969 in next 5 years, and then only 4 custom duty slabs will be zero rated, 5%, 10%, 15%, and maximum custom duty slab would be 15%. That is going to be a competitive economy. That what the government is claiming, that that's going to be a competitive economy across Asia in the next couple of years. So how do you see that, and how do you see the export surge? That is at least a little bit of 4 to 5%, but there is an export surge from Pakistan. So how do you see this tariff and all others, how they are going to contribute in economy?
There's 3 quick points. The first is that having a clear policy is very good. The second is that you have imports that go into your exports. So having a clear and low tariff rate for that will help your exports because it makes it easier. And the third thing is that your fiscal deficit and your current account deficit are linked, because the more you import, the more you tax on it, so you address your fiscal, but you have more current. So if this policy keeps that trade-off in mind, then we should be okay.
Your point well taken. Thank you very much, Dr. Hidayatullah Khan, for being with us here in the studios. Thank you very much, Dr. Usman, for your presence. And thank you very much, Dr. Hasan, for your presence online. Viewers, no doubt that the budget estimates which are proposed by the government right now, they are ambitious but not impossible to achieve. But that needs sustainable growth inside the country, clear-cut policies, and really, when we are talking about reviving the industry and agriculture, that is the backbone of Pakistan, and for that matter particularly we have to incentivize the farmers. We have to be very at least a bare minimum cost of the fertilizers. The seeds must have to be available, the real quality of seed that must not be compromised, and of course, in the harvesting seasons and all others, farmer support is very important. Even that is important that we have to provide them the cheap diesel and all others, and the machinery, that is important. Then again, when we are talking about the industries, the large scale manufacturing industry, the small and medium enterprises, the overall industries must have to be revived, because cost of doing must have to be cheap, raw material must have to be there from inside the country, and then the cheap electricity, that is very important, and these electricity tariffs must have to be rationalized when it comes to industry. We have to diversify first our industry, then we will be able to diversify our trade, because we need value added products to be exported from Pakistan. Then of course there are lots of other aspects of economy in which we can revive our foreign exchange, we can stabilize it, stabilize our currency. Obviously that impact our whole of the economy, but the energy costs must have to be rationalized. That is the real aspect. When it comes to the tax net, the structural fundamental changes, reforms are inevitable. Then there must have to be a clear tax policy, very facilitating, very simple, very neutral, and very attractive policies regarding the tax net and all the, if we want to enhance our base and have more tax revenues. And then there are lots of steps needed for the state-owned enterprises. Either it should be merged, some sort of privatization, the change in management, or the public-private partnership. But we have to do it with clarity, with transparency, and with responsibility. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.